It's August 1st, and we got a sea of green in the pumpkin patch and a couple of blobs popping up. So I figured it would be about time to do a little tour of the 3 pumpkins that we're growing and see where we're at. The weather is finally turning around. We had like 40 days in a row where in the morning it was cloud cover, like fog, kind of marine layer until, usually 11 a.m. or 12. And starting tomorrow, that's supposed to turn for hopefully the rest of the summer. It's been a cool year, as I mentioned in previous videos, but now things are turning around, and I think we have a good chance of still getting something pretty good to the scale. So let's take a look at the pumpkins. So this is the 2560 Ginger plant, and it looks really good, but actually it's probably the worst of the 3 plants, but it's definitely the best pumpkin in terms of growth. I have still a little bit of fill in on this side. We're pretty much filled in on that side. And so just over 1,000 square feet will be filled shortly. Let's pull the sheet off of this guy. So this thing has become a respectable pumpkin. It's starting to really get wide. And it's starting to do something I've never had before, but kind of like create a bird bath shape in the front. I don't know if this will end up becoming a big nose and they'll kind of close in on the blossom, or if it'll bird bath more. And I'm not sure which is better for risk of having a blossom end split like that. I've not experienced that, but it's still just super smooth and has that kind of veiny texture, which to me is always a good look for when it's still young and still putting on a lot of pounds. It's a really hard pumpkin to measure. So I've had days where it's done 55 pounds a day, and then the next day I'll measure it and it'll be like 40. So I think average it's probably been doing mid 40s for quite a bit now. It's at 50 days old, and I'm just under, I think, 1,100 pounds. I'd have to go look, but somewhere in that neighborhood. But I went back, buddy of mine, Andy, who grows in Napa, mentioned that the midway point in terms of weight for him is usually around day 50. And I went back and looked at my big 2465 last year and a few other big ones I've grown over the years, and I see the same thing. So I don't know if that's something that's kind of specific to our climate here, or if that's typical for everybody. But that would mean that this pumpkin has a chance of, probably its range is anywhere from 1,900 pounds to 2,100 pounds, and wouldn't be a personal best, but that's still a respectable sized pumpkin. So I'm still excited about its potential, a little bit worried about this area here. Today I'm gonna pull my truck up over here and then hook a come along to here, because it's now, even though the 2 layers of mill fabric are real slippery, even when this thing was 800 pounds, I could grab onto that and kind of wiggle it and slide it, because it's a really like low coefficient of friction between those 2 layers. But now it's just too big, so I'll hook up a come along and pull it. And the reason is because these things, not only grow out and forward, they grow back. And I am getting really tight here, so you can see tight here, making solid contact there, which I don't like. Same thing here, this pool noodle's getting squished, and yeah, you can see a real small stem. All my pumpkins have a real small stem this year. I think that's the cooler weather around pollination time is my suspicion. And you can also, hard to see, but I'm starting to kink a little bit here and here, so it needs to go back a few inches. So yeah, that's like I said, this is the pumpkin that, looks healthy plant-wise, but believe it or not, still hasn't filled in. I attribute that to the cooler weather, but I do find it funny that the plant that isn't the best has the best growing pumpkin. So let's go take a look at the 2177 Ford. Okay, so here's where 2177 Ford starts. And I would call this my best plant. It's just huge. Sea of green, teeny bit to fill in. But if you recall, this was the pumpkin that I had a real bad shape, kind of a pear shape, shrunken shape on. I pulled the plug on that was in there, and then I repollinated. So this pumpkin here is like 25 days old. It's on a secondary, first time I'm ever growing on a true secondary. It's gonna be very orange. And it started out, I like the shape. I still don't hate the shape. It's getting kind of more blocky. It was like really perfectly round there for a bit. But it really is turning into a wheel. But I've heard that's common with this particular seed. You can see how much of a wheel it is, but it doesn't have like a shrunken butt or anything like that. So it's still pretty symmetrical and filled out. And it's just starting to kick into gear. I think growing on a secondary, one of my theories is the secondary is starting to get bigger, but it started as just a kind of regular old secondary, which is usually not as big as the main. And then it seems like now that this pumpkin's become the sink for this plant, the plant is sort of adjusting and putting more energy into making that vine bigger and a better conduit for moving water and sugars and everything like that. So we'll see if my theory is correct. Like I said, this is the first time I've grown on a true secondary. Again, this one can only get at best like just under 100 days. So, you know, that's really going to limit what it can do. And right now its growth curve, to be honest, doesn't look great, but I'm just hopeful that that's related to the secondary and it's just going to take some time to catch up. But again, I can grow good looking plants this year. I don't know about the pumpkins, but I got the plants on lock. All right, let's go look at the 2465 Dawson. 2465 Dawson. And here's the plant. This one also needs to get pulled today, so I'm gonna do the same thing. Very smooth skin also. Actually, skin and color is really similar to the 2560 Ginger. This one I deadheaded. And you can see here where it's kinking. So it's same, see that kink there? Needs to get pulled back a little bit. Another very short stem. And yeah, this one's been pretty disappointing. It's on pace for probably being a 1,700 pound pumpkin, something like that. It's also, I think, just over day 50, and I'm forgetting the exact number, but I think it's in the 800 range. So yeah, it's just good plant, just never picked up steam. And I have a couple of other growers that are growing it. Actually, a grower in Napa named John, who's growing one that's on a really good pace, actually like a pace I think at or above this one's mom, so at or above the 2465 pace from last year. So it'd be exciting to watch that. He's also a good litmus test for somebody who has basically the same weather I have. So I don't think I can use weather as a complete excuse for my lower numbers. So it's a little bit of a mystery why I've had lower growth numbers this year with such a good looking plant, but you know, other growers are making it work with the same seed in the local area. So here's a view. I'm back in the other patch with the 2177. So here's a view of the backside of the 2177. You can see some of these leaves. The very first leaves are starting to wear out a little bit, but not bad. And I have had a little bit of spider mite pressure. I've sprayed a couple of times. I know I still have them, but they're sort of controlled to a point where I'm not actually super worried about them. But some of the leaf age gets accelerated by by spider mites. And the drier the climate, it seems like the more they accelerate. This is the 2560 Ginger. You can see here's the crown. Pretty good size, not the biggest I've had. And you can look down. Here. You can see I've unburied all my main nodes because I don't want any kind of rotting occurring, and I want to have a good view of them. I'll try and zoom in. You can see. So at this point, we're at the halfway point of the growth season, so there's still a long way to go, but the nice thing is we're close to the end of burying and pruning every day, which means the workload gets reduced. I'm looking forward to that. And then it's really just sort of focusing on keeping your watering regime and moisture in the soil just right, and making sure the pumpkin doesn't try and destroy itself. So like I said, having to move it today and make sure the vines aren't kinking or in a position where they're in too much stress. And then we'll start to have to monitor for diseases and pests a little bit. And those things are to some extent inevitable. But with a big plant built up like this, the plant can actually handle and absorb a decent amount as you get later into the year. And these fresh leaves here will power through. So we have really, in this area and climate, we have really long growth curves, I think, compared to other growing locations. We'll see if that holds true for this year.